Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 18 for Monday, August 11th. I'm Farbod Merkazi. He's Jace Hatfield. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Look, we've been excited to do this podcast every week. We always have fun, but today I think is going to be our most fun podcast of the year. Next week, August 23rd, the football will be kicked off. We will have real college football to talk about. So, Jace, you and I have to make our picks this week on this show for the entire college football season. I'm talking our playoff picks, our conference champions, conference losers, who's going to be who's going to be overrated, who's going to be underrated. We're going to talk about Heisman finalists. There's a lot of conversation here, and for those who have been listening from the beginning, I think for the first time in a long time, there's going to be disagreement amongst me and Jace. I'm just so excited. That's coming up in about 10 or so minutes. I have some kooky takes that I think we're going to try to get into if we have time. And Dabo Sweeney is Dabo Sweeney and had some fun moments at the microphone. So we're going to get into all of that. Before we get into it, Jace, are we ready?
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
It's one of those shows that I don't know. You're on pins and needles also, and the butterflies of college football season that naturally happen for a fan. That this is the entire reason we have this podcast. The butterflies that naturally happen for a fan are already there, but the fact that we're making our picks that in the year 2025 of college football, we're probably going to be wrong about most of them. I'm just so excited to be able to have these and track them and be able to one up people if we're wrong about right about something, and then take the punishments if we're wrong about something. Before we start, as always, make sure you're following us on Twitter at F4Discussion, on TikTok at flagged the number 4 discussion, and on YouTube flagged for discussion. We are more and more active. We're getting into it. We're going to probably get into 2 shows a week once college football season comes around. So there's just going to be endless content for everybody. All right, Jace. Dabo Sweeney, as I mentioned, was on a show a couple days ago. I'm going to restart that. Dabo Sweeney went on a show a couple days ago, and he was asked about Clemson's upcoming season. And most coaches, they give coach talk. They're like, I think we're going to be good, but we'll see. He said, in 2018, we were the first 15-0 team in the history of major college football ever. And I think we're going to be the first 16-0 team. It's a race to do that. Unbelievable quote, by the way, and unbelievable just guts to say that as a head coach. But that's just so Dabo, right?
Yeah. And if you're the guy that went 15-0, I think you're the guy that can start the 16-0 conversation.
That's actually one of the best takes you have. I don't think it's a secret, and I don't think either you or I disagree that could be a possibility for this Clemson team. We'll get into our picks in, like I said, about 5 minutes. But if you look at their schedule, if you look at the caliber team they have, they absolutely are able to go and make that happen. But for me, it's the guts to say that supersedes everything.
I guess he knows that Brian Kelly is already all in on that game, so he's like, I can say whatever I want. It's not like it's going to make him focus on me more. They already got the paw print in the LSU gym, so he's not putting more of a target. You'd be stupid if you were an ACC coach and Clemson wasn't the team that you were that's the team we need to live up to. So I don't think he's stirring anything negatively for his team that wasn't already there. They definitely already had the attention from the ACC. They definitely already had the attention from LSU. I'm pretty sure most of the country was pretty tuned in to the fact that Clemson's going to be good. So, it's crazy, but I like it. I don't blame him. I don't think it puts him in a worse spot. And I do think it's a little bit of a race. I do think there's kind of an arms race energy to the 16-0. You don't hear much about it. I don't think many coaches would admit it, like Dabo just did. But I do think that is in the back of mind of coaches. 16-0 would be an unbelievable feat. The Ducks had a chance last year. I'm sure Dan Lanning thought about it more than once. Unfortunately, it didn't go down that way, but it's still on the table. And I think you and I both think Clemson is if you had to pick 3 teams this year most likely to go 16-0, I'm very confident that both of us would pick Clemson.
Right. And to be honest, I don't know who those other 2 teams are right now, because the Clemson has the luxury of not a easy schedule, but they should roll through the ACC. And if you look at the odds in any Vegas sports book, they have the number 1 odds to win the ACC. They have a top 6 odd to win the national title. So it's not like they would be a surprise. I think the thing that's not crazy, but surprising, is the fact that they have been down in Clemson standards for so long. Like, they obviously had the magical run towards the end of the 2010s with Dabo, and they really established themselves as it's Alabama, it's Georgia, it's LSU, and it's Clemson, right? But the thing that since then, it's obviously college football has changed. Dabo, they didn't want to take transfers for a while. They have fallen off a little bit in Clemson standards. They've 10-2 to that point. So it would be interesting to me what this does to Clemson, to Dabo Swinney's future. Not that Dabo would ever get fired. Dabo's one of those guys that, like, he would step down. He would be given the opportunity to step away. But I'm saying, like, what it would do for this program for the years to come if they do go 16-0. Because you and I have talked about it. This program has to win it this year, because their team is so stacked, but their team is so senior laden, and their recruiting hasn't matched the standards of Clemson football as we know it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Not that this is Dabo's last year, but I'm with you. I think it's kind of the do or die, let's go all in type of year. I think it's similar energy, I would imagine, to the Michigan 2023 team that won it all. Kind of like this is our last hurrah. This is our real last shot. Let's go all in. Let's make it work. Let's get a bunch of seniors that are going to be future NFL players. Let's bring them back, and let's go get this national championship. I'm sensing a similar energy with the way that Dabo's been approaching it. Kate Klubnik has been approaching it, and how many players that they could have let go in the draft that would have been, first, second, third round picks that came back. So I'm kind of getting similar energy there.
Yeah, it's like exactly what you said, and I'm just going to repeat it. 2 years ago, Michigan, they use NIL for a lot of recruits, but they use a lot more NIL to bring back their juniors that were turning seniors, to have a hopeful shot to really go for the national title. That worked. They won it. Last year, Ohio State followed the same path. This year, I would say Penn State and Clemson are following that path of bring back the established stars you have, as many of the ones that you can convince to not go off to the NFL their junior year and come back to your program. And they're really setting it off. I mean, they have a tough first game against LSU, and then Troy, Georgia Tech. I love Georgia Tech, but Clemson is a step above them. Syracuse, North Carolina, Boston College, SMU, Duke, Florida State, who we don't know, and no one in the country can predict Florida State this year. Louisville, Furman, and South Carolina. There might be 2 or 3 potholes there, but I don't think that this program, this team, or this roster, or this coaching staff is in a position where they can't overcome those.
I'm curious who's favored in the LSU Clemson game. We've talked about it once, but that was about a month ago by now. I wonder if it's changed.
Well, I have the odds pulled up here.
Otherwise, they're going to be favored in all of the other games.
Yeah, I mean, that game it's podcast heaven to talk about, just because it's just given us, okay, Clemson's 4.5 point favorites right now according to FanDuel.
So they're going to be favorites in every game then.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's going to be favored in every game, but that game's going to be podcast heaven. Not only has it given us 2 topics in the last month, with Brian Kelly seemingly have made everything about this one game for LSU, but also it's just Dabo versus Brian Kelly. It's Kate Klubnik versus Garrett Nussmeier. That game itself is going to be such a launching pad for the rest of the season, for both programs involved. All right, that's our Clemson Dabo reaction. It's picks time. It's 2025 Flag for Discussion picks. Who will win what conference? Who will win what? Who will move on in the playoff bracket? Who's going to win the Heisman? Let's start with the Heisman, Jace. let's go over your finalists and give me your winner and give me a why.
All right, my 4 finalists. I'll start. My honorable mention is Dante Moore. I think he's 5th, so he's the odd one out. And then my 4 finalists are going to be Jeremiah Smith, Jeremiah Love, Arch Manning, and Cade Klubnik. And then I'm taking Cade Klubnik. I think he's going to be raising the trophy at the end of the season. I think he's going to win it. I think they have an unbelievable year. I think they'll go 12-0 in the regular season. I think they win their conference championship. We'll talk more about that. And I think that he's going to be ball out this year. He has one of the best receiving cores in the country. He'll have a really good O-line. He himself is already one of the better quarterbacks in the country. So unsurprisingly, I feel like Clemson usually has pretty high caliber running backs. Not that they don't have high-end running backs right now. They're just young and inexperienced. So I actually think I like the spot Cade is in as well. The only fear is their schedule being that easy. He might not get too many signature wins. That LSU one could be like forgotten by the end of the year. That's one thing I thought about that made me a little nervous. And then if they're just killing teams and he doesn't do much in second halves. Those are the only 2 things that gave me hesitation, but I'm sticking with Cade.
I mean, that's such an I don't even want to say obvious pick. It's a great pick in my opinion. I think everyone will find out why. But the fact that right now Arch Manning I think is first in Heisman odds. Jeremiah Love, I quote unquote, no pun intended. I love that pick. I think if he has another massive year for Notre Dame and the teams that they're going to get to face this year, he is going to be extremely important to that offense because there's no senior quarterback on that in that roster, and the quarterback at Notre Dame is just
CJ Carr.
CJ Carr. I knew Carr. I don't know why first name escaped me. The CJ Carr is going to be probably pretty good, right? But a first-year starter really needs his running game and his offensive line to give him the boost and the comfort and the protection to boost from here. So I like the Jeremiah Love. I also have Jeremiah Smith on my finalist. I think Jeremiah Smith could go down as the winner, and the reason being is the last time we saw a wide receiver win the Heisman other than Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter won it because he was not only exceptional at wide receiver and corner, but he was also not only exceptional at wide receiver, but he was also a corner. The true only receiver that won it before this was Devontae Smith with Alabama. And the reason I have to point that out is Mac Jones was his quarterback. Mac Jones is a fine quarterback, but he's not a superstar Heisman level talent, Heisman level plays. So most of the time when a receiver is a Heisman finalist, his quarterback ends up winning the Heisman instead of him, or ends up being a Heisman finalist instead of him. I do think Julian Sayin being a true freshman, not a true freshman, he's going into his retro freshman year, opens the door for a guy like Jeremiah Smith to win that Heisman, because Julian Sayin could be really good, but a lot of that is going to be because of Jeremiah Smith. I in addition to Jeremiah Smith, I have Drew Aller as a Heisman finalist. I think if Drew Aller is everything that we think he's going to be, and Penn State is that roster that we think they are, he's easily going to be here in New York. John Mateer, I love Oklahoma for this coming year, and I think we don't really see a combo of Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer, like a quarterback OC tandem moving from one program to another. We don't see that often. I think that could pan out, and if Oklahoma's offense stays healthy, he could be pretty special this year, and he has the potential of Heisman-worthy plays just because we saw them at Washington State last year, but you and I saw them. The whole country didn't because it was Washington State. My number 2, and it's dicey. My number 2 or 3 in the Heisman finalists this year is Lenora Sellers. I think if South Carolina takes an even bigger step than they were last year, Lenora Sellers is going to easily provide some incredible Heisman-worthy plays. I mean, they started out against Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, but they got LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas A&M, Clemson on their schedule. It's a really hard schedule. But I think if he knocks off one or two of those, has Heisman-worthy plays to win those games, all of a sudden everyone's going to be talking about Lenore Sellers. And I think he's going to be a finalist in that. I really like the Dante Moore uh, honorable mention that you had. I also think he could be it, but I was just playing the odds. And is Oregon going to get a third straight Heisman finalist? I'm not sure. My winner, though, I'm going to agree with you, Kay Klubnik. I think he's going to have the most well-rounded year. I think he has the most well-rounded team. I think he has the most dogs on his team, and I think, without a doubt, Kay Klubnik has the chance to pop even more than he did last year. And like you said, there might not be a Heisman-worthy plays, but the resume will speak for itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cade Klubnik is, looking at the odds, he's got the second best odds behind Arch Manning. I said this before the show to Farbode. Honestly, the only reason I have Arch Manning in my New York Final Four is last name, and I think Texas is going to be really good. I think Arch Manning, like output and what we see on the field and stats and all that, I think he's going to be really good, but I don't think he's going to be Heisman finalist really good. But I think being a Manning and being in burnt orange on a team that's going to be one of the SEC heavyweights is enough to get you in New York automatically. So he kind of takes up a spot for me. I love John Mateer and Lenore Sellers. I think both of them have difficult schedules, which if you win those games and you play well in them, that's going to vault you into the top. So I like both the players and I like the situations they're in. Now, those were two guys I flirted with. Drew Aller, my only drawback with him is Penn State has so much, like they have Allen and Singleton, right? So I was a little nervous that they have two elite running backs. Is that going to eat away at Drew Aller's passing stats a little bit? Probably limit his rushing stats. Also, no more Tyler Warren, so I was a little nervous on him there. And then, like Ohio State, he does play Ohio State and Oregon, so if he lays a stinker in one or two of those games, I was nervous about that. Jeremiah Love was the pick that I had that I liked a lot in terms of like if I was to bet on any of these guys to win a Heisman or they're looking at for exactly the reasons you said. I think that team's going to have to rely on him, and they have a relatively tough schedule. So if he's running for, but it's also like they have like when they play USC. USC is going to be a good team and it's going to look good, but they also don't have a good run defense. So if Jeremiah Love runs for 240 and 4 touchdowns against USC, I mean, that's later in the season. That's going to be a big deal. Also, I felt I always tell myself anything you see in camps, don't fall in love with a player if they look good in camps or if they look. Jeremiah Love, that clip of him doing like the footwork drill. I've never seen a human's feet move that fast. I couldn't even pick him out. It was blurry, and he also just looks like a freaking tank. Like he looks like he's wearing football pads when he's not wearing football pads. So I was like, all right, I was drooling. I was like, okay, Jeremiah Love for sure. This kid is an animal. So I have him in my finalists there.
I can't say that I'm not the type of guy that also falls in love with certain guys just based off of their training camp footage. But at the same time, it's so funny how football, when they're in football pads, it kind of dulls them down, dulls the level of athlete they are down, because all of a sudden you see them in the shorts and like the workout shirt, and you're like, holy cow, he's jacked. Like I've been seeing some pictures from teams posting their fall camp photos and videos around the country. I'm like, oh my god, these guys are like, no wonder they can take these hits. Like these guys aren't human.
It's funny how sports like uniforms do that. Like football makes you look smaller. Like I had friends in high school who like were objectively in great shape, strong dudes, and they just looked smaller in football pads. But you know what they look like normally, and you're like, yeah, these guys are really like they're pretty big, they're strong. But yeah, they get in the football pads and they look smaller. Or like on the opposite, like in baseball jerseys, like guys look so out of shape in those like kind of goofy baseball uniforms. But you see a baseball player in like an MLB player in like a dry fit T-shirt and shorts, you're like, oh my gosh, like, that guy's arms are bigger than my neck. Like that's great. It's just like so funny how sports uniforms will adjust. But yeah, seeing Jeremiah Love in padless in his jersey and stuff, I was like, that guy. I didn't even know he wasn't wearing pads until I saw the other running backs in the room. I was like, oh man, this guy's just that big.
I think the only sport you really see that in is like arms in basketball, because the shirts are just naturally.
And unfortunately, they're just so lanky that they're not very built out guys anyways. I guess it's hard when your wingspan is like 7 feet, but still, it's funny.
I mean, it's completely long tangent, but it would probably require the old school center in basketball to have like just jacked arms and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
Basketball aside, this is a football show. Those are our Heisman picks. We both picked Kate Klubnik, so we're not doing pretty good, very good on the disagreeing part yet somehow. Uh, but let's go for our conference title picks. I want to hear your two teams that are going to make the conference title game and then your winner. Let's start in the Big 12. Jace, who you got?
Oh, we're starting with the toughest conference for sure. This is the
You
one
could
that
you could
10 teams you could
yeah.
reasonably give me.
You could tell me either of our finalists are going to go 5-7 or 11-1 and I would believe you.
Yeah, it's very realistic. My final two teams were TCU and Iowa State. Two teams that I think Iowa State I think is getting underrated right now. No one's really talking about them. You bring back your your backfield duo, as I'm being told by Iowa State fans. We're calling them cookies and cream. Shout out Logan Shanks. He's starting that one right now. And then my other team is TCU. As I've said many a times, I'm sure no one was surprised by that. If you've been listening to the pod, TCU is my other team. I think they battle it out, and I'm going to stick with the Horned Frogs. I'm going to stick with the Horned Frogs and have them winning the Big 12. My biggest fear for that team, tough schedule. They play a lot of the favorites in the Big 12. They play a handful of them on the road. Iowa State on the other end, I think they bring back both their backfield. They bring back a lot of stars in the O-line and on defense. And the key point being Rocco Beck's the quarterback with a pretty favorable schedule. That's why I think they're being underrated. They bring back probably like the most production from last year in the Big 12. They really just lose the two big receivers. Big loss. I don't want to understate that. But probably the most favorable schedule of any of these good Big 12 teams. So I like the path that they have. I trust Matt Campbell to get back. Last year, unfortunately, they got demolished by Arizona State. Again, I'm sorry, Logan. I hate to bring that one back up. I think TCU is this year the buzzsaw for Iowa State, unfortunately. Again, tough schedule. Like to your point, that TCU team could literally go 4-8 and be a good team. Or they could go 11-1 and beat 6 ranked teams on the way to it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, this team is unbelievable. I believe in Josh Hoover. It killed me to leave him out of my Heisman finalist. Out of being objective and straightforward, I had to. But I do like the Horned Frogs.
In pure Big 12 fashion, I don't have either of those teams in my finalists. I'll say this. I'm going to leave TCU to you all year. If you're right about them, I will give you all the flowers that you need. I don't think that they're going to be bad, but I just think they are your team, so I'm going to let you hold your baby.
Fair. That's very fair.
I will say before I announce my finalist and my winner of the Big 12, Iowa State was I probably missed on Iowa State because I've loved them going into this year with Rocco Becht and like the whole cast. Iowa State, we keep talking about how they are a window program, and they did it with Brock Purdy and crew, with Brock Purdy, Brees Hall, and them. We're going to be probably not great. We're going to compete. We're going to be competitive, and all of a sudden, we're going to go try to win the conference and make a pretty good bowl game or the playoff. Not that that's not the goal in the other years, but they're a developmental program. So I think this year, next year maybe, but this year especially is Iowa State's year to really shine. So I probably missed on not having them. My first finalist is Arizona State. I do think Arizona State's just I believe in Kenny Dillingham so much, and obviously his knowledge of just offensive football is what gets you into the door of becoming a Kenny Dillingham believer. But then you just hear him, the way he talks to his team, the way he talks to the press about his team. He's extremely honest. He's extremely open, and he is there for the long haul. And it's weird because you often hear, this program is building like an SEC program. Like they're not there yet, but they're going to be there because they are prioritizing trenches. They're prioritizing getting length on the outside and having explosive playmakers, running the ball. I don't think that ASU is necessarily doing that, but Kenny Dillingham has been around the Dan Lannings of the world, Mike Norvells of the world. He was the OC at Auburn. He knows how winning football is built, and I think uh, and how winning football is game planned for. So I think ASU is likely to get back to the Big 12 title game. As much as I just talked about them, my second team in the Big 12 title game is Utah. So I have a Pac-12 matchup: Arizona State versus Utah in the Big
I
12
love
title
that.
game. I love everything about Utah, but it could fall flat on its face week one against UCLA if Devin Dampier and Jason Beck aren't what we think they could be. With that said, Devin Dampier, pretty good quarterback at New Mexico throwing the ball, electric quarterback with using his legs last year. He broke, in terms of quantity of tackles missed, he didn't have as many as Ashton Genty last year, but it's also because he didn't run the ball nearly as much as Ashton Genty, but he was on that pace. He was electric on the ground. He scored a ton of touchdowns just with his legs. I think similar to Oklahoma, who brought in Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer together to Norman. Utah brought in Jason Beck, who was the New Mexico offensive coordinator, and Devin Dampier was a New Mexico electric quarterback last year. They should be in a position to really succeed this year, and I'm going to stick with them from our podcast a couple weeks ago. I'm going to stick with Utah Utes as my Big 12 champion over the Arizona State Sun Devils. But I like I said, I probably missed on not having Iowa State up there.
No, I like both your picks a lot. The Pac-12 championship would be fun too for having it Utah and ASU. Interesting, like Utah, ASU, and TCU, three of the four teams we had picked. Tough schedules. It's not like an SEC Florida Gator schedule when I say tough, like where it's like, oh, you're just playing top 10 teams every week. Tough as in though, like you have to play like the at Kansas States. You know, you're going to at TCU, and then after TCU, you got to play Iowa State, and then you got to go at Colorado. Teams that are very solid, and like Farbo and I have said, all these teams are so level playing field that it's so easy to slip up 1 week, make one bad play, an injury kind of derails you. This is definitely the conference with the most variability this year, I think, in who's going to win it. The betting odds will reflect that. So the schedule is tough, and I think ASU and TCU play early on in the season. They play in the first half of the season. The winner of that game, I think, has the rights to say, like, all right, this is kind of in control, assuming they're both good at that point. Utah's got a little bit more of like easing into the Big 12 schedule. They get Texas Tech, who's a good team at home. At West Virginia, it's not a team I'm super bought in on, but at West Virginia is never an easy place to play. And then they do get a bye week before playing Arizona State, which is a huge scenario for them. But then right after Arizona State, they go play the Holy War. They got to play at BYU. Huge rivalry. I know you don't want to overlook ASU in that one. So they both have fun schedules. You end the year at Baylor, Kansas State, at Kansas. So tough schedule for all three of those teams. So it'll be fun to see who comes out on top. Could also be a conference where you each have like 9, 7, and 5 teams, and then now we have to figure out we're going to like the 12th, tiebreaker, and it's like, okay, which coach has bigger shoe size is like the final one.
Yeah.
That could, if there's anything to happen, it would be that conference. I'm looking at the betting odds for the Big 12. You have 3 teams tied at +5. This is ESPN Bet. I'm only using it because they have the best view, so I can see everything at once. I do not know what DraftKings or FanDuel looks like right now. Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, all +550. We did not take the Wildcats or the Red Raiders. The Baylor Bears at +650. That's a team that like Andy and Ari have talked a lot about them. I've seen a lot of people in the media will pick Baylor. They're big on Baylor. I think they're a great team. It almost makes me nervous. Whoever is picked the most for the Big 12 is going to stink. Like, it's just, I feel like that's guaranteed to happen. And then the one team that nobody talks about, nobody picks, that's going to be the one to win it. We'll see who that is. Iowa State's kind of being the team that a lot of people are quiet on. Utes are in there at +650. Then Horned Frogs take the jump to +900. And then you go to Iowa State at +1100, which I think is very good value for a team that returns a lot. They played in this game last year, and they have a pretty favorable schedule. And then I think beyond that is kind of a long shot odds after those teams.
Yeah, I mean the Big 12 is just the Big 12. It's the reason Josh Pate calls them America's College Football Conference. Fans all around the country constantly say the same teams are in the playoff every year. The same teams win it every year. Well, look at the Big
Go
12. Go
watch the Big
become a
12.
fan of the Big 12. Yeah, go watch how anything can literally happen in the Big 12. I will say some of my picks are made with the heart, and I know that's not going to lead me. That might not lead me to a good point for in terms of keeping score of this in the future, but I I have no reason to believe this other than the fact that I think there are some breadcrumbs there. This might be Kyle Whittingham's last year. We really respect him as a coach. I think it would be really fun if he went out with a playoff appearance and a conference title. Um, I that's kind of where I am with that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the ACC. I think that we have agreement here. We had agreement last week, 2 weeks ago when we did our ACC show. Who is your ACC finalist and who is your ACC champ?
Yeah, I'm going pretty chalky here. I'm going Clemson versus SMU, and I'm going to take Clemson. And they play once the regular season. I'm going to take Clemson in that game. They play again in the conference championship. I'm going to ride Clemson round 2 in that one as well. No disrespect to SMU. We've talked a lot about Clemson. It's just that's all credit to Clemson. Nothing to be taken away from the Mustangs.
Yeah, I also have Clemson in my ACC title game. Surprise, surprise. My number 2 team is Georgia Tech, and if you missed the show last week,
I like that one.
I think Georgia Tech, for lack of a better term, is like a homeless man's Clemson. They have a lot of seniors returning. They have a strong defense. It was kind of lacking last year, but you got to think that with some of the changes they made in the offseason, it's going to get a little bit more stout. Their offense is pretty solid receiver wise, and their team is truly taking the identity of Brent Key, their coach, and they run the ball. Not to mention they have a senior laden quarterback. They're pretty senior laden in general, but they have Haynes King, who's been around college football forever. And I think if they beat Georgia and how in that 8 overtime game last year, that like you can argue if they lined it up tomorrow, they lose to Georgia by 10, 14, whatever you want to say. But in that game, that went to 8 overtimes. At that point, it doesn't matter you're Georgia or you're Georgia Tech. It matters who's going to win this 2-point conversion. And it's such a weird way to decide a game. But if they just won that game, I feel like I wouldn't be alone. Not that I'm alone in this, but I wouldn't be one of the few people hyping up Georgia Tech as much as I am. I think Georgia Tech has a chance to really make some noise this year. I don't have their schedule pulled up. I thought I did, so that's bad podcasting by me. But they have some potholes in that schedule. I do think Clemson in general is just better everywhere. Like I said, lack of a better term, homeless Clemson. For that pick, Clemson is my ACC champ. Pretty obvious based off of our conversation at the beginning. They're disgusting everywhere, and as long as they live up to the hype, they brought in Tom Allen, they have Garrett Riley. They should be pretty awesome.
Their odds to win the ACC
ahead.
minus. Yes, I said minus 110. To win an entire conference before the season starts, minus 110. That is how much better they are on paper than the rest of the conference. Kind of a weird thing I just noticed looking at this. So Florida State is 6th in the ACC with best odds to win the conference at plus 3,500. There are 13 teams in the Big 12 with better odds than that to win their conference. So they're basically saying that's the parity you're going to get in the Big 12 versus a conference like the ACC. So if you hate how the same teams play in the playoff, our boat said, watch Big 12. ACC, neither of us took Miami, who is at plus 425. We both just left them out. I think the Mario Cristobal bug has struck us in the past. We've seen him strike Miami each year. That might be one of those things. Like he needs to show us before we pick him. Louisville's a kind of a team that's been hot lately. They're 3rd at plus 850. A lot of people have kind of hopped on the Louisville train recently. Jeff Brom's a great coach. They lost Tyler Shuck. I'm blanking on who they replaced him with. Help me out here. We were just talking about him.
USC quarterback. USC transfer quarterback.
Miller Moss. Thank you. Yes, Miller Moss. I was like,
it just came to my head too.
Yeah, so he's kind of like a Tyler Shuck 2.0. I feel like that's a similar skill set. Good fit for that team. That's a dangerous team. I think that team could definitely play spoiler to any of our picks. And then you go Mustangs and Georgia Tech, our takes there. SMU, I think, has a tough-ish schedule, but I like that the home games they get. I like Rhett, what he's doing there. So that's going on. And then Farboat obviously with Georgia Tech. And then it kind of drops off. At that point, you're getting into
Yeah.
teams that I don't think will compete for it.
At that point, you're hoping that North Carolina and Bill Belichick are ready to compete year one, or Boston College is stepping up. Syracuse is actually going to be good as compared to what people think that they are going to be this year. I want to, before we get to the next conference, I want to quickly talk about Miami real quick. So this is their schedule, and excuse my dog whining behind me. They start out with Notre Dame. They have South Florida on September 13th. They have Florida the week after, Florida State the week after that. Then they have home against Louisville and Stanford. So I've seen it online. I didn't realize this, and I can't believe we didn't realize this until now. They don't leave the state of Florida until November. So one, phenomenal scheduling.
That's
and really
crazy.
great for them. Yeah, because they get Notre Dame at home. They're against. Then they have another home game. USF at home, Florida at home, Florida State on the road, state of Florida, Louisville and Stanford at home. They don't leave the state of Florida until November. So one, that could really help you. So that almost put them in the ACC title game for me. But at the same time, I just think this year might be kind of a reset year because last year, as electric as they were offensively, like they were the number one scoring per drive points in the country. Their defense was pretty rough. And I don't think that's the vision of Miami Mario Cristobal has. He obviously has the vision of winning games, but I think he has a vision of we're going to be explosive passing the ball, sure, but our identity is going to be running the ball, offensive line. A lot of what they did last year was because they had to fit the offense around Cam Ward. I think this year Carson Beck, he could be really good, but there are just some games on the schedule that could get them. I invite them to prove me wrong. I fully understand that I could be proven wrong on this.
Yeah, I wonder if the first, also only playing one road game anyways until November is wild, let alone all of those being in Florida. That first game at SMU, I feel like when you play, 5 of your 6 games are home games, and your only away game is just across the state. I wonder if that sets them up poorly for like an at SMU game, kind of your first time actually having to travel. I wonder if that sets a weird tone. We'll have to see. Louisville, they get them at home, but as we just mentioned, that's no slouch. NC State, it could be frisky. They're not anything crazy, but they could be frisky. And then ending the year back-to-back at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. That feels like a Mario Cristobal shouldn't but will lose one of those. And it feels like they're going to be in the driver's seat going into that Pitt game to win the conference, or not to win, but to go to the conference championship. And they're going to lose on some crazy final plays. That just kind of feels like it has written over it. They lost a lot. You lose Cam Ward. Carson Beck could be good, but I can guarantee you he's no Cam Ward. You lose Damian Martinez. You lose Elijah Arroyo. You lose Xavier Restrepo. Yes, they filled those positions decently with good players, whether it was homegrown or the portal, but all those guys are playing on NFL rosters right now. They were all very solid. That's a lot to lose to have to turn around and bounce back, especially with how much Georgia Tech has returned. That's a team that we both like. Same with SMU. So Miami's definitely going to face some of the more, let's figure this thing out. But they start the year off in a favorable way, not having to play an ACC opponent for a little bit. Obviously not favorable in the sense of playing Notre Dame, but you can lose that game. It doesn't hurt your chances of making your conference championship.
And when I say reset, I think people hear that as 7-5 or an 8-4. I just don't think it's going to be 10-2 or 11-1. It might be a 9-3 year. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be bad. I just think they were like, okay, last year was fun. Let's try to do that again, but also build for consistent success. Mind you, they have the best offensive line in the country. Last year, they didn't really have great receivers. You mentioned Xavier Restrepo. I mean, he was an undrafted or late round receiver who's fighting for a spot on the Titans. He was really good, but they also had a pretty big drop problem in terms of all of Miami receivers last year. So, I mean, the offense might struggle a little bit. Moving to the Big Ten. This is a conference that has, it's probably 3, 4, maybe 5 horse race. I think you and I both think it's a 3 horse race. Who's in your conference title game for the Big Ten? And then who do you have to win the Big Ten?
Yeah, I got the odd man out was the Ducks for me. I have an Ohio State Penn State matchup, and the Buckeyes winning that one. The Big Ten, I won't say too much because I'll let you get into your take too. The Big Ten, I'm with you. I think it's a 3-horse race. Some people might try to argue Michigan. USC fans will try to argue USC. I think it's a 3-man race, but I'll let you give your pick and then we can dive more into that.
So similarly, I kind of made this from the heart, but I made this using a little bit of brains. Penn State, you and I have talked about this. This is James Franklin's ceiling definer year. This is as good of a Penn State team as he's had, and as good of a Penn State team I think that he can have. Like, I understand that he recruits well and he develops well, but those two running backs, it's really hard to replace that. Having the quarterback that if he finally finds consistency, Drew Aller is the number one pick next year. If he's consistent this year, and NFL GMs can trust him on that, Drew Aller's top 5 number one pick in the NFL draft next year. I think everything about Penn State, and they paid $3.1 million for Jim Knowles, one of the best DCs in the country, to come become their defensive coordinator for a defense that, even though Penn State fans say Tom Allen wasn't great, it didn't really need that much of an improvement in terms of coordinator, but they invested a ton into that. So I say all that to say, Penn State faces Oregon, they face Ohio State, and they do have a couple more games that could be potholes. I'm not predicting that they're going to be bad, but I have Ohio State and Oregon in the Big Ten title game because I predict that they will lose one, if not both of those games. It's conceivable that they'll win, but it's also conceivable to me that they'll lose one or both of those games. Ohio State, they don't get Oregon this year, just simply on that. I don't think they're going to go 5 straight years losing to Michigan either. So then, if they're going to win those, they get Penn State at home. So that's huge. As long as Julian Sain pans out, or at least is good enough to match Will Howard last year and remembers to pass the ball to Jeremiah Smith, I think they will have a pretty good shot of returning to the Big Ten title game. Oregon, you and I have talked about it. They have a fairly easy schedule. I mean, the first game they're playing Montana State, a lot of people scoff at them. The FCS rankings just came out. They're the number 2 ranked FCS program in the country. So they have a couple teams that could definitely take them down. They have Montana State. They have Wisconsin, who almost beat them last year. Iowa is going to be pretty good. The big one, USC and Washington, those are scary to me too. But then the other big one for me is obviously Penn State on the road, their whiteout game. So when we're talking about that, I think they're probably going to go 10-2, 11-1, find their way into the Big Ten title game. The reason I say this matchup's from the heart for me is because the Big Ten had a really good opportunity to develop another rivalry, and Ohio State and Oregon played twice last year. We know how the first one went, and we know how the second one went, and they didn't put them on the schedule to face each other this year. I know you don't manufacture rivalries. I get that. But at the same time, when you have the opportunity to pin 2 of your best programs in the country together, I think it's just must watch. And I'm going to take the Oregon Ducks, bit of a homer pick. I think the Ducks will win the conference. Call me a homer, whatever. I just think if Oregon is good enough to get to the Big Ten title game, they're going to be good enough to beat whoever they square off against.
I agree. I think it's between these 3 teams. I don't see any all 3 of these teams have some tough games outside of playing Penn State. Penn State playing the 2 of them. I just don't see them, either 3 of these teams, losing to anybody outside of like each other. At the end of the day, some teams might put up fights. I just think everyone else is too many question marks, too many weak links, too many issues on whatever position groups. Versus Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State are their weak links and issues are like, oh, is this 5-star quarterback going to be good or great? Like that's like their question marks. Because the other teams are like, is this offensive line going to be able to hold up? Their wide receiver room, I don't know anybody in it. Like, so I think these 3 teams are going to beat everybody on their schedule. Penn State's in the interesting spot because they get both, as you mentioned. Oregon and Ohio State don't play. So if Penn State wins both those games, they're locked into the Big Ten championship. If they lose both, then they're out, and then it's Oregon versus Ohio State, which is what kind of the scenario you have. I'm most likely, unless there's a scenario where someone trips up down the line. I went the route where I think the home team wins the big games. I played it safe, is what I basically did. I took the scenario where Penn State beats Oregon at Penn State, and then Ohio State beats Penn State at Ohio State, which would lead to an Ohio State-Penn State Big Ten championship. Then it's James Franklin, of course, so I got to go with the Buckeyes to win that one.
You played it smart. I've seen James Franklin with this exact team lose to Ohio State at home last year. So while I don't think that it's going to be easy for Oregon to go up to Happy Valley on their whiteout game and win, there is a conceivable possibility that will happen. I also think that like I said, my picks call me a fraud.
If anyone's mad that you picked one of the betting, if someone's mad that you picked a plus 350 team to win the conference, I mean, if that means everyone would think anyone not Clemson would be a fraud. Not a single team in the Big 12 has better odds to win their conference than Oregon does to win the Big 10. So if someone wants to call you a fraud, that's crazy.
I'm looking at Penn State's schedule in general right now. The only landmines they have are Oregon and Ohio State. They have Indiana, they have Iowa, they have Nebraska. Those teams are more, let's see how they pan out and let's see how they build. I more so just think that it's really hard to go undefeated in college football. I know we saw Oregon do that last year, and I know Dabo Swinney predicted that led our show today. But at the same time, it's just so hard to do that. And Penn State's going to drop one or two of those games, and it might just be the one that against the team that takes their spot in the conference title game. Regardless, those are our picks. We could be very right or wrong about that. We have one more conference. I don't think anyone's really heard of the SEC, Jace. But what or who are your SEC finalists? Who's your SEC champ?
I think the SEC is going to have less parity this year than a lot of people think. I feel pretty confident in this championship. I'm going Texas versus Alabama, and I'm going to roll with the Horns. I think the Longhorns take down Alabama in what is going to be one of the greatest SEC championship games we've seen. I have a feeling that game is going to be nuts. I like both those teams a lot this year. I think that game's going to be nuts. Texas over Alabama in the SEC championship.
So I love that pick. I have the same exact matchup, Texas versus Alabama. I have Alabama taking the championship home and winning the SEC championship. Once again, it's the same thing I said in our SEC preview show. I have no real reason other than the fact that I saw Kalen DeBoer really bring his team together year two, and they were not only just a good football team, they were a machine. It felt like nothing was ever wrong. And all of a sudden, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, I remember, what was it, the Oregon State game? They had like a 4th and 2 to win the game. If they converted, they could run out the clock and win the game. If they didn't, Oregon State got the ball back. It was in a rainstorm. Oregon State could have come back and won the game. And they had a crazy trick play. And it obviously worked because they were a machine. I just think if Ty Simpson can be a guy that they believe, at least be consistent. One of the things I know Kalen DeBoer has said that he loved Jalen Milroe, but one of the things he just wished he had more of last year was consistency from the quarterback spot. You don't need to be able to make every wild play, but can you be boring and make the 6-yard out? Can you get the 8-yard slant? Can you just make the boring plays that allow us to get downfield and maybe set up those big plays? So there were some games, namely the Oklahoma one last year, that Jalen Milroe couldn't. If Ty Simpson can do that, Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, and that offensive line, they're ready to win, in my opinion. And I think it would quiet a lot of the people that are like, I wish Nick Saban was still our coach. I know there's that's definitely still a take, and it should be respected. But at the same time, move on. You got a new coach now. I don't want to be that guy that's picking Texas to do everything because I just don't know anything about Texas other than the fact that they are very talented. Is that bad? I don't know anything.
No, I think Texas is an interesting team. I've talked really highly about them this whole podcast, and I'm picking to win the SEC, so I still am. I do think that they have fair question marks. Like their wide receiver room this year isn't going to be super proven. Their running back room isn't super proven. Arch, I think, still has question marks. But I also do think, like, when you look at like the depth chart of the team and the star ratings that they came out of in high school, like all blue chip, mostly 5 stars. I think Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, linebacker edge duo is going to. If your offensive line is not elite, you are going to get shredded by those 2 guys. And as a fan, it is going to be miserable to watch your team play Texas if you do not have a good O-line. You're going to get sacks. You're not going to be able to get a handoff off. So I think that just alone, like we've seen dominant defensive line / linebacker rooms. Like think of like when Kirby had those Georgia defenses with Dan Lanning those few years, where just like they had Nakobe Dean and Trayvon Walker, and they were just unstoppable. I think their defense is going to be around that level. And I do think there's enough upside in that offense for them to be moving like that. So I do love Texas a lot for that reason. I guess the one thing I should say, I think Texas's secondary, I don't think is up to that level as the Georgia teams. I don't think Texas has a Jalen Carter that's proven quite yet. They have the stars and the players that have that potential. So it's definitely there. But I mean, Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons are already like some of the best linebackers in the country, and they're going to be sharing the field together. When you have like 2 6'4", 240 linebacker edge hybrids that run 4.5s, good luck. But I like Texas. I think Arch will be very solid. Like I said earlier, I don't think he's going to be Heisman great, but I think he's going to be very solid. You have Wisner back. You have Wingo at wide receiver. I think they have enough to make it work. And they got Jack Hendries from Cal as a sure-handed tight end, which I like for that offense too.
I think I misspoke. I'll restart. I think that people who, if anyone's listening at home and is like, man, this kid hates Texas, I literally have them in the SEC title. I just can't pick them. My conscience can't pick them to win the conference. I have them over Oklahoma, who I said I love for this year. I have them over Georgia, who everyone loves. I have them over a lot of programs that Florida, that a lot of people out there are picking to be in the SEC title game. I just think that there's a chance that Alabama is a machine this year. And if that does come to fruition, it's going to be really hard for anybody to beat them. I want to point out 2 things that I'm stealing from Solid Verbal, the podcast, the very famous podcast, that I just want to bring up on this show. So, one, Josh Pate was a guest on Solid Verbal, and he mentioned this. There is a world where Texas is playing in the Red River rivalry against Oklahoma, and they are fighting to not be 500. I don't think that's the reality, but they start out against Ohio State. Then they got San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston. You assume that if worst case scenario, that's probably 3-1, right? Then they play Florida and Oklahoma. So Florida, let's say worst case scenario, they're 3-2 after Florida. All of a sudden you go and play Oklahoma in that massive rivalry, and you're playing for 500. You're playing to stay in the playoff race. You're playing to stay in the SEC title race. I don't think that's going to happen, but that is a wild thing that I didn't expect the possibility to be there. But if Arch Manning's not the guy, or if Arch Manning, knock on wood, I hope not, gets hurt, they probably have the talent and depth to hang tight in there. But at the same time, it's going to be, there's a reason that Arch is the starter. So that's a possibility, and I'd love to get your take on that. The other thing, though, that I'm going to steal from them is Mizzou's schedule. Have you taken a look at this? There's a chance Mizzou sneaks into the SEC title game if Bo Prabula is everything we think is good. Like if Bo Prabula is good, they're playing Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana. Was 3-0. They have a tough game against South Carolina, but if they can beat that game, then they have UMass, Alabama, Auburn, Vanderbilt, A&M, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma and Arkansas. That means they're missing Texas. They're missing LSU. They're missing some big dogs
Georgia,
in the. They're missing
Florida.
Georgia. They're missing Florida. They. It just shocks me that this can be an SEC schedule, and then you look at Florida's SEC schedule. It's don't get me wrong, it's a
Yeah.
tough schedule. You're still playing Alabama. You're still playing South Carolina. You're still playing Auburn. You're still playing
Yeah.
Texas A&M.
At Auburn,
But
at
each of those
Oklahoma.
games,
The SEC is loaded.
yeah, it's a very hard schedule in terms of the rest of the country. But if Bo Prabula is a star, all of a sudden we could be looking at a 10-2, 11-1 Mizzou Tigers who are fighting their way into the SEC title game, which none of us expected.
Yeah, no, I do not expect it, and I still even with the ease of the schedule, I don't know if I'm buying it. Just I don't know if they're beating the North Sellers in South Carolina. I don't think they're beating Alabama. At Auburn, we'll see. I think Auburn's going to be decent. At Auburn's a tough place to play. Texas A&M, they're going to finish 8-4. So if you're catching like a 6-4 Texas A&M, sorry, you're screwed. If you're catching like an 8-0 Texas A&M, well, there you go, you've won. At Oklahoma will be
There's a
very
lot
tough.
of averages.
It's just Texas A&M. It's like a lock to 8-4. Then at Oklahoma,
Texas
towards the end of the
8-4.
year, will be tough. So you don't want to, that Oklahoma game. I think we're both high on Oklahoma, so that's going to be tough for them. Oklahoma was a team that I know we're both high on, and I'm sure we both had the same thought of like, I was like, oh, let me give them a look just in case they can make the title game. Saw the schedule, I was like, oh man, no,
Yeah,
I can't
exactly.
take that. At Texas, at Texas, at South Carolina, versus Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama. I was like, yeah, all right, that's
No shot.
good team. They could be good. No shot. That's abysmal. And there is one bye week at the very end of that. So, oof,
Unbelievable.
that's a tough run. That's a team. I think LSU and Georgia are probably two teams that a lot of people expected us to say that will probably receive some backlash for not putting on there. Georgia, I know we're both kind of on the same page. I don't know if I'm buying into Gunnar Stockton quite as maybe I'm underrating Gunnar Stockton, but I'm just not super bought in on him this year, especially with how good the SEC looks like it's going to be. Not sure I'm bought in on Zachariah Branch being like the big weapon addition. Like, great player. Is he the kind of player that Georgia seems to produce at a high level? He doesn't really seem to fit the Georgia player mold. I feel like they do better with the Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey's, like more, big, like Brock Bowers, big physical style player. Lad McConkey was kind of more of a rack guy or like receptions guy, whereas Zachariah Branch is more like get the ball in space kind of guy. So I don't know if I like love the fit for that team, and I don't know what I think about Gunnar Stockton. Rest of that team we'll have to see. And then LSU, I think Nussmeier, I think could have a chance to be amazing. Their wide receiver room looks like it's going to be really good. We'll see what the defense is. But I think the big question mark that you and I are both off on is the old BK man, Brian Kelly, Burger King at the top. I don't know if we're bought in on him. So I think that was my holdup with LSU. I'm assuming you were probably similar there.
Yeah, I feel like LSU, similar to Penn State, might slip up at some point. And even though we've seen LSU's had a Heisman winning quarterback in the last couple of years under Brian Kelly, and they have just like how we say Texas A&M is Texas 8-4, LSU's 9-3, Brian Kelly. So I expect them to be very good. I do think Garrett Nussmeier is a very good quarterback. I don't trust that it's going to go perfectly for 12 straight games, or at least for the 8 conference games that they need to win to make the conference title game. Georgia, here's the deal. It's Kirby Smart. You and I both feel the same. Like if I tell you Georgia's 11-1, 10-2, heading to the SEC title game, heading into the playoff, neither of us would be surprised. Both of us would be like, man, how did we whiff? But at the same time, I just have a lot more reason. I think for me, I have more reason to believe in other programs than I have reason to believe in Georgia for 2025. And that's
Great way to
how I feel about them. Let's get into our playoff bracket. We have our top. Sorry, my dog is moving around. Up or down? We have our top 12 seeds. Let's go over who you have in the playoff. Obviously, we know our top 4 seeds. I have Clemson, who won the ACC.
There's no automatic
Oh
seeding
yeah.
buys this year. It's just straight seeding. So they're going to take the 12 teams that make it, throw them 1 through 12, whatever. So it'll be, there's no buy, guaranteed buy. There's buys, but you're not like plugged into them.
Okay, so I'm just going to say our conference titled winners. I have Clemson for the ACC, Alabama for the SEC, Oregon for the Big Ten, and Utah for the Big 12. You have Clemson for the ACC, Texas, SEC, Ohio State for the Big Ten, and TCU for the Big 12. So let's start with your group of 5 team and then go down your list of your seeding. I think this will be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. So my group of 5 champion is in the 12 seed for me. That's going to be the Tulane Green Wave. They won the Jake Retzlaff sweepstakes, if you want to call it that. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but they do land him from a football perspective. That is a great addition. Already a solid team. It's a team that produces like high end transfer / even NFL talent. Think like Tajay Spears kind of players. I like where they're at. I think the American's a pretty competitive conference, but I like that they miss out on having to play like at North Texas. You dodge that one. The one tough one they do play at UTSA. I like that they get the Navy Army games. I can't remember if both are home. At least one of them's home. So I think that bodes well for them. I like Tulane this year. Ty Thompson is moving to tight end. I think they should be a solid program. And they're also one of those programs where, like, when a really high recruit that is lost on a depth chart, like a top tier program, they've done a good job, like kind of cleaning up in the portal, grabbing some of those guys. So I think that bodes well for them. But I'll work my way up from there. So that's 12 Tulane. I have 11 SMU, 10 Iowa State, 9 TCU. So there's your Big 12 teams. 8 LSU, 7 Oregon, 6 Alabama, 5 Penn State. I have 4 at Notre Dame. So that's the team, didn't win a conference championship, but they'll be in the top 4 at the bye. Then Ohio State at 3, Texas at 2, Clemson at number 1, which is 13-0 in my case. You might, I lost your mic there, Farbo. I don't know if you're muted or not, but
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
You got me now? Okay. Yep.
I
think I have to point out here, I think you got 2 SEC teams, which is pretty crazy.
I have LSU, Texas, Alabama. I got 3.
Okay, you got 3. I haven't counted how many I have, so I might be even less, or I think I'm right at the same amount as you. But it's if the SEC only gets 2 or 3 teams in the conference, they're going to change up the whole playoff seeding chart right away. I love that you went more realistic than me. Than I went chalky of not necessarily putting your conference title winners at the top. I do think Notre Dame pretty bold of a pick at number 4 with a first year starter quarterback. But I mean, Ohio State has that too. Texas has that too. It is the year of the first year starters.
Yeah, I think my Notre Dame at 4 is my complimentary to Jeremiah Love in New York. I think like that. I think that is the Jeremiah Love show to me. And I think Notre Dame is going to run through him, which is a good strategy, as we will find out as they are the 4 seed. But that's kind of the complimentary pick there.
So my playoff bracket for this season, I have UNLV as my group of 5 contender. I think UNLV, Dan Mullen, he's going to do some crazy things. They were right up there as a contender for last season. They brought in Alex Orji to compete for the quarterback spot, the Michigan quarterback who really they didn't trust throwing the ball, but he's pretty electric running it. I think Dan Mullen could do some fun things with him. So I just think UNLV had lost a couple players that like they definitely needed to keep. Not like they lost them to the draft or to graduation, but at the same time they have reloaded a little bit. I really like the Tulane pick, especially with the Jake Retzlaff at quarterback. I don't think Boise State's necessarily going to be good enough to be in the playoffs this year. I think that team is good. Last year we saw, other than Ashton Genty, I didn't really trust their offense to do anything. Maddox Matson, he was fine as a game manager. Wow, it's like the first time we've ever said that term on this show. That's surprising. But he was fine as like a game manager quarterback. But he's not a like go out and make a play for you type of quarterback. They relied so much on Ashton Genty breaking tackles to make things happen last year. I don't think Boise State's going to be in there. All right, my top seed Clemson, number 2 Alabama. Like I said, if Alabama's a machine, they're going to be ranked pretty high. And I kind of took the SEC bias in there. I'm like, if Oregon wins and Utah's in, Alabama's going to be number 2 because Clemson's probably going to be number 1 pretty early on into the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
If somehow taking that spot from Texas, I have Oregon at number 3, Utah at 4, Texas at 5, Penn State at 6, Notre Dame 7, Ohio State 8, Miami 9, LSU 10, ASU 11, and UNLV 12. So this means we both left Georgia out of the playoff entirely. And Oklahoma, even though we both love them, they are at least 4th in the SEC in both of our eyes.
Yeah, Oklahoma, I love the team, especially compared to last year. Just a tough schedule. Makes me a little nervous. Georgia, we've already talked about that, but yeah, need to. You said it. I need to say it too for cover my own bases. Kirby Smart's Kirby Smart.
You're right.
This is like the least confident and like least sexy of a Georgia team I think I remember in the last couple of years. Still really good, and it's still Kirby Smart. Maybe it's also like like voter, like in the NBA, they'll talk about Jokic could win 5 finals, but voters kind of get tired, voter fatigue. Maybe that's what Georgia is for us, just seeing them up there every year. That could be happening as like an inherent bias we're taking on. ASU is a team I love. I love Kenny Dillingham. We talk so highly about them. I really like ASU as a program. We have a good friend who we worked with at Oregon who now works there, and I know we're really rooting for him and for ASU. I think, unfortunately, in the Big 12, which is how many toss-up games there are, they just end up being like just off the edge for me. If the playoff was 16 teams, I think you'd see the Sun Devils in there on my list. I'll absolutely be pulling for them, but I hate having them out. My big weird thing was TCU winning the Big 12, but I have them at 9. I think the Big 12 this year is going to be one of those conferences where both like TCU could win it at like 9-3, 10-2. Which kind of backs them. I think if that happens, the committee's for sure going to boost up the extra Big Ten and the extra SEC over them. Same with Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has a good enough schedule that if they look dominant, they can get lifted up there. So I have them high too. Now do we want to go through what this would look like in a bracket and break it down on who's winning what?
1 second. I just want to point out one mistake I clearly made. For people who haven't been following along, is I had Georgia Tech as my number 2 ACC team and they are not in my playoff, but there is a there's a second ACC team in my playoff in Miami. Somehow Georgia Tech must have been good enough to make the ACC title game, but not make the playoff. But Miami, the committee thought was good enough to make the playoff. I don't know. That's my reality, I guess.
Stuff has happened.
Hey, to be honest, inside baseball, I made the change to Georgia Tech being in my conference title game right before the show, so I didn't change the playoff bracket. But I'm sticking with this bracket. Yes, let's go for your bracket and tell me what that looks like for you.
All right, my 8-9 game would be LSU TCU. First one to 80 wins. I would have LSU winning that game. That would be a really fun game too. Hoover versus Nussmeier. That'd be like the 2 gunslingers. NFL scouts would be drooling over that game too. Fortunately, all good things come to an end. As great of a game that is, you play the Buzzsaw Clemson. I'm taking the Tigers out of that region to jump to the net to move on to the semifinal. Then my 5-12 game would be Penn State Tulane. I'm going to take Penn State there. Kind of similar scenarios they were in last year. They would then get Notre Dame again. I'm going to take so you kind of have the rematch there. I'm going to take Notre Dame again. Sorry, James, I've seen it too many times. That would give you a Notre Dame Clemson semifinal game. Cinema, I think that'd be a great game. You'd have best quarterback in the country by our predictions, at least finishing wise, and then best running back in the country. That would be a fun game. On the other side, you have the 7-10 matchup. For me, that would be the Ducks versus Iowa State. I'm taking the Ducks in that one. Could potentially be a fun game. I just think too much speed, too much power for the Ducks there, or for Iowa State to handle, and Oregon would move on. They would play Texas. An Oregon-Texas quarterfinal game would be also a phenomenal football game. It breaks my heart, but I think I would take the Longhorns in that one. That would be a great football game. That's one of those games that will probably come down to who has the ball last. The 6 and 11 jump into the final region. You're going to have Alabama versus SMU. I think sneaky fun game. Two good teams. I'm going to take the Crimson Tide. Sorry, Rhett Lashley, you get bounced again in the first round, but I'll take the Crimson Tide to advance. They would play my 3 seed Ohio State. I didn't even mean to set my bracket up to just have all these amazing football games, but kind of worked out that way. I guess that's how a bracket works, right? Ohio State, Alabama, I think would be a great football game. Two teams in very similar spots this year in terms of young, new face at quarterback. But hey, we have an elite wide receiver room. You're going to have elite weapons, and we have a confident defense and good O-line, great coaching staffs. That would be like one of the few upsets I have. I would take Alabama to win that, giving you an Alabama-Texas rematch from the SEC championship. In that game, I'm taking Texas to go back against Alabama, win 2 in a row. They're going to take on the winner of Clemson-Notre Dame. Great game. I don't know if CJ Carr is going to be able to do enough to get over Clemson. And I think Clemson's D-line, hopefully by then, has shored up the run game, can do what they can against Jeremiah Love, which stopping Jeremiah Love is like 100 yards for him probably. But Clemson, Texas, national championship game. I think these are the 2 best teams in the country going into the season. I think they prove it during the year. Would be an amazing national championship. I actually flipped this pick like 6 times in the bus home from work today. But it's right now it's at Clemson. I'm going to stick with that. I think the Clemson Tigers, in an all-time classic national championship, take down Texas.
Damn, that's a phenomenal bracket. Really good games too, and I can't disagree with any of the decisions you made. We'll explain why in a second. Sorry, but if my dog's getting a little restless. But all right, my bracket, my 8-9 game is Ohio State, Miami. I think in general, Ohio State will just have too much firepower for Miami. I think Miami has made upgrades with Corey Heatherman and some personnel on the defensive side, but I just don't think that that's going to be enough to slow down Ohio State this year. So I'll have Ohio State moving on in that game. My 5-12 matchup is Texas UNLV. I don't think I have to explain this very much. Texas will move on in that game. 7-10 is going to be Notre Dame versus LSU. I just think that's going to be a game where if LSU is a serious program offensively, I would pick LSU to win that game. Notre Dame should be a very good defensive team again this year. They lost a lot, though, defensively. And they lost a senior quarterback. They have a first-year starter playing quarterback for them this year who's going to be awesome. But we have to see it before we predict that. I'll have LSU win the 7-10 game. My 6-11 game is going to be Penn State versus ASU. I think Penn State, that roster is just going to outclass ASU. Penn State's going to win that game. So that makes on one side of the bracket, it's going to be my number 1 team is the Clemson Tigers. They're going to play the winner of my 8-9 game. I picked Ohio State. I'll pick Clemson to win that game. Number 4
rematch of that crazy game from a few years back.
Exactly. Number 4 team is Utah. They're going to play Texas. Unfortunately for Kyle Whittingham, I think Texas will win that game. That makes the matchup for the semis on the left side of my bracket, Clemson versus Texas, which is an unreal matchup and also a terrible jersey matchup because they are both going to be wearing
I was thinking about that at my champion.
The same colors.
The off-color orange.
Awful. Yeah. Just I don't like
wrong
that
color
at
oranges.
all. So then on the right side of my bracket, I have Alabama taking on LSU. Great SEC matchup in our playoff. I'm going to take Alabama to win that game. I think Alabama, like I said, the point isn't Alabama's this good. But the point is, if I'm right that they're going to be a machine, at this point, they're going to be even rolling even more. So I think they are going to be set and they're going to beat LSU. That makes their matchup the winner of the 3, Oregon, versus the 6-11 winner, which I picked Penn State to beat ASU. Winner of Oregon Penn State, which is the conference title game last year. I'm going to have that be the same result. Alabama takes on Oregon, and I'm not going to lie, I can't make a decision to this one, but I know who my national champion is. I just like, can I have Kalen DeBoer beat Dan Lanning again? I just can't make that decision, man. But long story short, it hurts the heart so much. By the way, this was completely on accident. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I'm going to have Oregon beat Alabama in the semis. So that makes my national championship game the Clemson Tigers versus the Oregon Ducks. And as you know from a long time ago that we started this podcast, and from the doc that's sitting in front of you and I, Jace, I have Clemson winning the national title. I'm going to stick to that with my bracket. Clemson is going to beat Oregon in the national title game. Wow, that hurts to say. But we have the same national champion.
Clemson's a hard team. There's not really, if you remember, like in our ACC review, I gave the one potential weakness they could have: run game. Got a new defense coordinator. Your D line, who's elite at getting to the quarterback, and these are guys who will be first-round draft picks, by the way. If they can develop the tools to stop the run a little bit better than they have in the past, they're going to become, like, quite literally like no weaknesses. They will be a strength in every facet of a football game. Senior leadership, experienced head coach who's won national championships before. It's hard to pick against that. Like, he's one of 3 active coaches to win a national championship. Also, a side note, something that we didn't mention, and we failed. I can't believe we failed to even say this. Your 7-10 matchup, LSU Notre Dame, the Brian Kelly Bowl. That would be fantastic. I think Notre Dame fans would be. I couldn't even. I know how much my Notre Dame friends hate Brian Kelly. Rightfully so. They hate him a lot. If they lost that game, I don't even want to know what they would say or what they would do. That might be like they need to put the phone away, no text message allowed for 24 hours. That would be a fun game, though. I would love to get the Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly. I think you had LSU winning that. I almost want to pick Notre Dame just because I think Marcus Freeman would dunk on Brian Kelly again. Like, they're basically like, hey, sorry, Brian Kelly, this younger, better looking, cooler version of a head coach is ours now. And I could almost see Marcus Freeman like alley-ooping himself out the backboard on Brian Kelly and winning that game. But that would be fun. It'd be fun to get an LSU Notre Dame playoff game. I hope that happens. I hope the committee lines that one up for us.
By the way, I don't know how you did it. I'm sure you did it a lot more smooth than me, and you wrote your bracket out. But I didn't write my bracket out. I did it on the fly here. So I didn't know before we did this that those were my matchups. But that's phenomenal.
I didn't line up any, like, my matchups. I just went 1 through 12 based on, like, I looked to look at the schedules, lining up, like, okay, who's going to end where? What do I think the committee will say about that? And then, like, I was like, okay, what storylines would this create that would be fun? It naturally worked out to have a Clemson-Texas title game, which is nice because those are what I had as the 2 best teams coming into the season. With you, though, awful jersey matchup. They better force Clemson to do like a white and purple for that game and just leave orange out of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see the like bright Clemson orange and like the burnt orange from Texas. I couldn't think of the names. Like, oh, I'm going to get killed if I don't get this right. I don't want to see those oranges against each other. So they better figure something out if that game happens.
That's like the person you play MLB The Show with, and they don't really know like how to play video games, and they just want to play video games with you. So they go, oh, the white uniform is fun, but they're the away team, and all of a sudden you have 2 away teams playing against each other. I mean, 2 teams of white uniforms playing against each other. I'm like, that sucks. Yeah, no, I just don't want to see that happening. That's gonna be bad for the sport. Like that,
There's
it's
so
already
many
bad enough your
great
national
jerseys in there.
right, and it's already bad enough that your national championship games played on a Monday. You can't make people, casual fans, turn on the TV and have two teams wearing the similar colors playing each other. That's just not good for ball.
Yeah, no. Like the Michigan Washington national championship years ago, awesome jersey matchup. Cool colors, it kind of worked well. It was cool. I mean, last year was pretty solid as well. We'll see what we get. I'm trying now. I'm looking through these ones and thinking like, if I could draw one up, who would I take? I feel like Ducks. Just the jerseys are always cool, and you have flexibility. Like I feel like an Oregon Ohio State's always awesome to watch, especially like last year in the Rose Bowl. Unfortunately, the game
Yeah,
wasn't. The jerseys were cool. Texas Penn State would line up nicely. I don't think that Penn State would get that far, but
LSU would be a cool uniform.
yeah, LSU Oregon could be cool.
Yeah, I also just like. I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but if Utah gets in a big game like that, Utah's shown the chops to have some really cool looking uniforms and helmets and whatnot. That uniform in a national title game would actually kind of slap, I think.
I would love to remember the Rose Bowl and they like painted the roses
Yes.
into the Utah logo. They could get something like that for a national championship. That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. So we have our Heisman picks. We have our national title picks. We have our playoff picks in general. We have our bracket set. We're gonna have to keep track of this throughout the year, Jace. Um, I I do have. I know we're at an hour 22. I have three kooky takes for you that I haven't told you in the past. I haven't told
Yeah.
you. I haven't prepped you for this. I just want your not your immediate reaction, but I want to hear what you have to say about this. So, number one, there's a lot of people constantly asking who's going to be this year's Florida State. Like, who's going to be like
Ooh.
I'm not saying like who's going to be 13 and 1 and go 2-10, but like who's going to be like go from pretty good to pretty bad. Um, and there's also a lot of talk about who's going to be this year's Indiana, who's going to be like not talked about much, and all of a sudden make the playoff because of their schedule and because of like how like they were pretty just slept on. So the take I have for you is that Indiana is going to be this year's Florida State.
I like that. Okay. Let me pull up their schedule. Let's get the math.
So Indiana brought in if 24/7 is right, they brought in a ton of transfers again this year. I think the number was 31, but it's not popping up for me for some reason. But they brought in a ton of transfers. They brought in 23 transfers. They brought in Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback we like from Cal. But the reason I say the Florida State of this year is a lot of that 13-1 team was a combination of a bunch of transfers that met really well with high school recruiting. Last year's Indiana team was really good, but that was a lot of transfers that they hit on. If they didn't hit on this year's transfers, what do we think?
Yeah, I look at the schedule. It's pretty. I mean, the schedule line. They're going to start 3-0. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, all at home. Then they play Illinois. It's at home, but Illinois is a very solid program this year. They return a lot, so that's very possible a loss. Then you go play at Iowa. Kinnick's not an easy place to play. Then you play at Oregon. They're probably going to lose that one. They get Michigan State and UCLA at home to follow that. Very winnable games, but both of those teams have a lot of potential. The Aiden Childs is no joke. We haven't talked about him really on the show much at all. That's a guy that's maybe going underrated into the season. That could be a player that pans out to be better. And that Michigan State's
You're
not a team you want to
foreshadowing my
overlook
next
right
prediction.
now. Uh-oh. I like that. UCLA with Nico, with Sean Foster. We'll see what we get out of them. Likely a win for Indiana on both those games, but I definitely not chalking those up as free wins. And I wouldn't overlook the other of them. At Maryland, Loxley, I think, doesn't have this team riled in the way he needs to. I'm not sure where Maryland's at. I like Indiana to win that one. But then you play at Penn State. I don't like their odds there. And then you get Wisconsin. They should beat Wisconsin at home. Similar to the Michigan State UCLA game, I guess you don't know what you're going to get. And then they should beat Purdue. I see 5 wins baked into the schedule. I'm going to go with 4 losses baked into it, giving you a 5-4. Your toss-up games being Sparty, UCLA, and Wisconsin. You go 1-2, you're 6-6.
It's
go
in the
0-3, and you're
I'm
5-7.
not saying, I'm not saying they're going to go 2-10. I'm just saying, like, do we have a drastic coming down to earth? And by the way, I want to point out that I should have pointed out before, these aren't my takes, but these are plausibilities that based off of conference and schedules for this year. So the second take I got for you, Jace, one of these 4 teams will go 9-3. Purdue, Michigan State, West Virginia, UCF.
Okay. I'm going to axe out Purdue. Odom's a good coach, and I think he's a reset coach, and I think that's what Purdue needs. But at Washington, at Michigan, at Minnesota, at Notre Dame, you play USC, you play Washington, you play Ohio State. Don't think I like that schedule, even at Minnesota. So I'm going to axe them. Sparty, my heart, you know my soft spot for Sparty. I would love to have it be them. They actually start the year off in very favorable fashion to go 3-0, Western Michigan, Boston College, Youngstown State, all at home. But then you go at USC, at Nebraska, at Indiana later in the year, versus Michigan, at Minnesota, at Iowa, and you get Penn State. I'm unfortunately going to axe them. The team I actually am going to go with here is West Virginia and Rich Rod. I could see Rich Rod, they're kind of like Indiana last year. They're going to be relying on 30-plus transfers. If they hit a few times, 50-plus. Unbelievable. If they hit on a handful of these transfers, and Rich Rod, I know he's been clowned a lot. I've clowned him a lot in his career, but he's also won a lot in his career. And he's in the Big 12. That's the most volatility. They have a good stadium atmosphere. I'll rock with West Virginia. I think they're being slept on heavily. I looked at it earlier, they're third to last in odds to win the Big 12, so nobody's talking about them. I think nobody's really factoring them in. But that's a conference that's wide open. It's a schedule that doesn't have many baked-in losses to it. And similar to Indiana last year, if you just hit on 4 or 5 of these transfers and you bring a new offense into a conference that's not really seeing what you're doing, RPO with Kurt Signetti, I think the Big Ten wasn't prepared last year for it. They will be this year. I like what we get out of West Virginia. I'm pulling up the schedule to see what we really got here. Robert Morris, Ohio, Pitt at home, at Kansas, Utah at home, at BYU, at USF, TCU at home, at Houston, Colorado, at ASU, Texas Tech. I think that's your Indiana. If there's a team to go 9-3, I think it's the West Virginia.
I don't hate that answer at all. I think 54 transfers, like you said, the only one that outdid them is no, they had 53 transfers. Purdue had 54, but Purdue was really bad last year.
Barry Odom went for it.
I heard on a show earlier this week, Barry Odom was mentioning he had 38 players in his opening team meeting, and now he has 82 or something completely new players, including walk-ons, on the roster. My only reason here, I'm going to pick your homer pick, even though I'm not a Michigan State guy. I would love to see Jonathan Smith be back as at least semi-winner. I don't think they're going to be there yet this year. I mean, we said it on a couple of shows ago. You have to be patient with Jonathan Smith. He's going to build it slowly in the right way. He's not going to microwave it. But they have Aiden Childs who could end up being a really good quarterback. Their receiving core, Marsh is a great receiver. Offensive line, they brought in a ton of offensive linemen from the portal. If a couple of them click, they averaged 19 points a game last year. Can they get that up to 25, 28? And Jonathan Smith's an offensive coach. All of a sudden, you are in a lot more games just by scoring that many points, and especially in the Big Ten against some of the more traditional Big Ten schools.
Yeah, they have Jack Belling, who will be one of the better tight ends in the country. And they have 2 corners that just got announced as like a preseason watch list for the Blinken. I can never say it right. Blinkenoff or however you say it.
Yeah.
I'm not. I was like, I wonder if you got it. It's whatever, however you say it. Blitnikoff.
The Blitnikoff. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not saying it'll happen, but it's in the air. Last random take before we close it out, Jace. One of these schools will finish the year 7-5. Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas. All the major power schools with the first-year starter at quarterback.
I hate to say Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I also feel like it's the cheap answer, but I think it's Oklahoma purely because of the schedule. Michigan, Auburn, at Texas, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, versus Missouri, versus LSU. I say
Texas is neutral
versus,
site.
recognizing a home game. Oh, neutral, okay. Um, that makes me nervous. I think schedule-wise, that's baked in. I also feel like that might be the cheap answer because they're like the lesser of those programs at the moment, and with the schedule. I think the other team I would pick before you said Oklahoma. I know you're not going to love this one, but Alabama would be my most likely scenario. I think if Kalen DeBoer if Ty Simpson, the quarterback room doesn't pan out for him, and if Kalen DeBoer, the fans don't seem to really like him that much right now, and if that energy from the fans to DeBoer is carried over into the locker room, they play a tough enough schedule being in the SEC that could happen. The thing with Ohio State and Oregon, not that they're in any worse of a spot or better of a spot than Alabama, it's just their schedules are much, much more favorable, where I just can't see a world where they go 7-5 in the Big Ten. Whereas like if you're Alabama and you have the easiest SEC schedule and you're still playing Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, at Auburn, at Georgia, I mean, that's at Florida State, even in the non-con, Wisconsin. So I think schedule-wise, they're just kind of lined up for that. To possibly happen. I'm not predicting that. I should have clarified.
I have to point out, none of us are predicting this. Neither of us are predicting that either of these schools will go 7-5. But one thing I can confidently predict without knowing it'll happen is one of these quarterbacks isn't going to be as elite as everyone's saying they are. At least one of these programs at the end of September, at the beginning of November, is going to be like, we might need a transfer guy in the offseason to actually compete for a natty next year. This guy might have a ceiling on him. And that might be Dante Moore. That might be CJ Carr. That might be Alabama regretting that they didn't go out and get someone else to compete with the band of four that they have there. That might be John Mateer even in a step up in competition might start seeing ghosts. Who knows? That might be Arch Manning, as much as people don't want to think it is. But I just think there is a chance, a very high chance, that one of these programs, two of these programs, are looking back in November saying, we don't have the guy to win a natty. We might not have a guy that, we might have a guy that can go win 8 to 10 games, but we don't have a guy to go out and win a natty. And they're going to have to go out and find another guy in the offseason next year. That was a fun little kooky takes. None of those are my takes. I have to say that again. Those are takes I just wanted to surprise Jace with. All right, it's been a long show. Anything else you want to pick for this season before we sign off?
Man, I have so many things. I think we've said everything we can in our hour and a half that you've all, if you're still here, bless your heart. Thank you for staying with us. Dante Moore, I want to shout him out. Watch out for him. Everything's indicating that he is going to be an absolute stud with the Ducks. Obviously, I'm saying this because I know this is the Ducks. But I'm excited for Dante Moore this year. Don't be surprised if he very quickly becomes one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I'm excited for him, and I think they have the schedule for him to potentially be a Heisman candidate. His betting odds are pretty favorable, so if you like to throw some money down, he's not a bad choice.
Right. And I love that. Kirby Smart, by the way, you're welcome for more. Not that you guys are necessarily listening, but you're welcome for more chips on your guys' shoulders. I know you needed more bulletin board material for neither of us having you in the playoff or the SEC title game. So you're welcome to Kirby Smart for just giving that to you. With that said, Jace, next time we're on the show, we're previewing games. We are talking about real-time college football. This is going to be a blast. I appreciate everyone who's listened. As always, Flag for Discussion on YouTube, F for Discussion Twitter, Flag the number 4 Discussion on TikTok. We are having so much fun, and we're so ready for the season to start. So, on behalf of Jace, on behalf of my dog who's decided to make herself known throughout the show, Harper, and on behalf of myself, thank you so much for tuning in. Peace out.